And so my name is Daniel Blake. Thank you so much for joining me at Bethany Arts Community in Austin, New York for this event, this premiere of Got My Wings. This is a collaboration that features a new score that I composed along with choreography by Todd and Tomiko Magario. And it's will be danced by the incredible young artists of Westchester Ballet Company. As you can probably imagine, this production was impacted by the current surge of COVID cases that we are all experiencing with the Omicron variant. Most notably, all three of our male soloists had to miss this performance, unfortunately. But due to the urgency of the message of this piece, and also to honor this inspiring creative energy coming from these incredible dancers, we all agreed that, as they say, the show must go on. So here we are. This piece you will see today is an adaptation. It's a work in progress. This is the first of what we hope will be many more explorations of this work, which takes its primary inspiration from the man you hopefully heard a little bit of. I'm so happy he was able to call. This is the devoted Buddhist practitioner, Jarvis J. Masters, who has been incarcerated on death row in San Quentin, California for over 3 decades for a crime he did not commit. So I just want to sort of set the context for that call, and then I'll share a little bit of a conversation that we had in recording a few weeks ago. As many of you know, our system of mass incarceration imprisons people of color by an unconscionably disproportionate rate of 5 to 1 compared to white people. And in 7 states, including California, where Jarvis is incarcerated, this disparity is a shocking 9 to 1, according to a recent study by Ashley Nellis of the Sentencing Project. This is one reason among many why author Michelle Alexander states unequivocally in The New Jim Crow that, quote, mass incarceration is the most damaging manifestation of the backlash against the civil rights movement, end quote. The most definitive power of this unequal system of mass incarceration is the power to condemn someone to die, as is the case with Jarvis J. Masters. Based on witness testimony that was later shown to be false and recanted, Masters was convicted and sentenced to die in 1990 for sharpening a weapon used in the murder of a prison guard in 1985. The compelling and detailed revelations uncovered by Masters' legal teams over the years concerning this false testimony have led many legal observers to determine that Masters is factually innocent, even while 2 California state judges overturned his appeals, most recently in 2016. These revelations are summarized in a 2019 Northwestern Journal of Law and Social Policy article, which has a whole section on Jarvis's case. Authors Rob Warden and John Seasley conclude that the inexcusably long delay in allowing Masters' appeal, which ended in a blanket denial by California state judges, may be the result of an untenable conflict between the powerful corrections officers union, remembering that the victim was a corrections officer, tough on crime political rhetoric, and the fact that members of the California judiciary must stand for election. Mr. Masters' death sentence serves as a stark and urgent reminder of the extraordinary fallibility of our criminal justice system that demands our collective attention. And yet, Jarvis J. Masters has stayed incredibly strong. In the face of all this, he has maintained his innocence eloquently and passionately, but also with a spiritual fortitude that has emanated outward for the benefit and safety of countless other people. His spiritual commitment to finding freedom in the face of tremendous human suffering is an inspiration to all who are involved in this piece. This is why I wanted very much to reach out to Mr. Masters, and why I was so thrilled when he responded with a phone call and agreed to join me for an interview, and called, as you know, today as well. While we don't have time to listen to the interview in its entirety, you can check that out at the Bethany Arts Community event page for this live stream, where you can also find a program for the piece you're about to see and hear. What I'll play here is an edited version from our conversation. There's some slides with the words written out for you to read if you have trouble hearing from the phone call, as is sometimes the case. So I asked him to share some updates on recent events that have occurred in his ongoing appeal, which is now at the federal level, as well as his insightful critique on death penalty activism, especially the profound problem of substituting the death penalty with life without parole. And then we'll turn to some of the spiritual themes I took up in Got My Wings, which are based on his writings. And so here we'll have an opportunity to bring him directly into the conversation. Hopefully you'll hear better this time in his own words. And so once again, I just want to express my profound gratitude to Jarvis J. Masters personally, and also for the support of the entire Free Jarvis movement, which I sincerely hope you'll consider joining after this afternoon. You can check the website freejarvis.org for more information on how to get involved. So with that, let's turn now to Jarvis J. Masters in his own words.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
The first thing about the hunger strike was that I had just got some new attorneys. These attorneys are not affiliated with the state system of how people on death row are appointed attorneys, so they were unfamiliar with who these guys were. And because the crime scene happened at San Quentin, there is a lot of hatred from prison authorities for why I'm on death row, and the opportunity to think that my appeal was over with gave them opportunities that they just seemed like they had been waiting on for years and years. And some of those opportunities were, to harass me, to not allow my attorneys access to seeing me. Then they wouldn't give me private phone calls, and as you know and I know, these phone calls are recorded and they're monitored, and it's the prison's phone. I'm the only guy on death row who is actually living on the crime scene. And for them to restrict me to using only their phone to communicate to my attorneys was ridiculous. The last way of communicating with me is, of course, through the mail, and they opened my attorney's letters to me, and they said they made a mistake, but, those are kind of mistakes that can, eventually get me executed. So, you can't make mistakes like that. And this went on, and then I tried to get a visit from, David Chef, and they lied to him and said that I refused to come out. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I have to somehow, take this out of the prison and bring attention to what's going on with me, because if I don't, then I have no appeal. And I thought that's what they were trying to somehow make the reality, that I didn't have no attorneys. And I said, well, I'm going to hunger strike. I'm going to let people that support me, who care about me, who know I'm innocent, know more about what's going on. And I knew that not eating was going to create that kind of response, that San Quentin would have to deal with that. This was something that wasn't hard for them to do. I wasn't asking for something huge that I could claim some victory on. I was asking them to look at me like they look at everyone else that has been condemned to die. To that extent, I did win my grievances. Sentencing someone to life without the possibility of parole is another kind of death sentence. If people in the community vote for that, that's just what you're going to get. You're going to have people, innocent, dying, lying on the floor in their cell. And you have no appeal after that. Every day that you're in prison, your loved ones are in prison with you. To vote to end the death penalty is for them to vote to see that the death penalty is replaced by a loved one being in prison for the rest of their life. When they had the death penalty on the ballot, some people who advocate overturning the death penalty, we were talking, and they said, you know what, Jarvis, we could have won this if people of color would have came out and voted for it. And we're just curious why so many people of color on death row, loved ones, didn't vote on something that more people of color is sentenced to die with, proportionally. And what I shared with them was that, you're asking all these people of color to make deals, to put their loved ones in prison for the rest of their life. And we know that in many situations, we are framed, we are set up, we are made to take deals that we know that we're innocent. Because if we didn't take these deals, we would be sentenced to long prison terms. And because the juries were what they were, all white mostly, we knew that we better take this deal. Now you're asking our loved ones to vote to put everybody in prison for the rest of their life. We are not going to do that. People of color is not going to vote and the death penalty so they can spend the rest of their lives in prison as a deal. There's a historical miscarriage in that, and families know it as clear as day. I think it's important for people to understand who represents us in their own interests. Their own interest is to get us off death row. That's it. They don't care about being innocent. They don't care about life without the possibility of parole. To them, life without the possibility of parole is a victory. And to their credit, they work very, very hard. They're very committed to that. I mean, they would spend as much time as necessary to take a man off death row, but they do not care after that. Sometimes when I refer to home, it means more so about what you feel. You know, how do you get along with you, and how do you cope with the environment you're in? It's not something that, you know, that has some permanent station in your life. You know, it's not something that you have no, you know, hope to get out of. So when I speak of home, I'm speaking of keeping my heart soft and strong and not letting this place bring the worst out of anybody, you know. So when I talk of home, that's what I mean. We all have a right to be indignant. We all have a right to our own way of dealing with our anger and our frustrations and just being locked up, you know, 24/7. You know, we have that human element that struggles with all these things. For me, I became not just someone who had this gripe with society, who had this anger against society. To me, I found that it was so many people who had it a lot worse than me, and what opportunities that I have to understand that now were opportunities that I had to become better by me than anyone else could. So that was a part of waking up. That was a very life-changing experience for me, to not just take what has happened to me to, you know, to be of my own anger and my own frustration. I got a lot of opportunities that people are dead because they don't have them no more. And I just took heart to that, man, and it softened me up. You know, it gave clarity. It made wherever I was my own home, my own study, my own practice, where I needed to be, you know. Waking up means becoming more spiritually aware of how your life just doesn't end being somewhere that is so, you know, damning or dehumanizing, you know. It means something more than that. It means that you can still mattering, being necessary, holding some purpose in your life. And all that entails what I mean by waking up. And it's a beautiful thing if you know, take serious. My truth is, I realize that the fear of staying in here is similar to the fear that I have getting out of here. You cannot be one place and not have the other place have some equal uncertainty. By getting out of here, then I'm going to face a lot of challenges that I can't even fathom, you know, and how I'm going to go through that, how I'm going to work through that, how I'm going to live with that, you know. And those are the same questions I had when I first came to prison, you know. So, you know, getting out of prison doesn't necessarily mean that my hope and my aspiration stops at the gate, you know. Where do we really find that kind of company to help sustain that idea of where we want to be in our lives? But if I were to say I'm trying to help a lot of kids from coming into prison, you know, in that way of doing so, I'm also helping myself, and I would apply that to someone who's involved in trying to save the planet, you know. It gives them the opportunity to save themselves, because, you know, we all have our work to do, you know. And where we find this help in my own situation is having some spiritual roots laid down, you know, having some idea that, you know what, I may not do everything I want to do, you know, in this lifetime, you know, but I'm going to do enough to know that I'm doing something. And that's a fact. And sometimes we can get along with that just as good as we can get along with something that we want something big on. In final analysis, man, I have what comes out of what is my life story. I only have that. I only have what comes out of me to do what I need to do to help someone else. And whenever I'm not doing enough of that, then I feel guilty by that. And that's just the way I live my life, man.